Maybe y'all saw the news out of Nebraska today. Apparently our entire state is going to go bankrupt in 2 quarters. Me and my husband owned a cattle ranch here, and I can confirm that all of the cattle ranchers here overwhelmingly voted for Trump. We support him. We voted for him. Something like 70% of our entire workforce is undocumented immigrants, and they straight up are not showing up for work anymore. They have all either fled the country, fled the state. They don't want to get raided while at work, so they have just moved on to work somewhere else. And straight up, we are gonna go bankrupt now. We are gonna go bankrupt. And yeah, we voted. We knew that the immigrants would get deported, and he was coming after immigrants, yet we still voted for it. Overwhelmingly voted for our own demise. I was talking to my husband last night, and I have to admit that it seems a bit foolish now when you think about it like that we voted for something that is now putting us directly out of business.
Hey, Nebraska, is this you? Come on up to the front of the classroom. I have some information for you.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
So I know that when you elected Donald Trump, you decided to put all of your apprehensions aside and elect a person who was clear about his intentions. He was going to get rid of undocumented immigrants, which would cause your primary industry, the agriculture industry, to go down. Then he decided to do away with the farm subsidies, basically welfare, that would just annihilate farmers in Nebraska. But wait, there's more. Those 2 things are just the tip of the iceberg. I was told from a well-placed source that you guys are considering bankruptcy in the not so distant future. They said 6 months or so. So if you combine all of that bad news with these people deciding to vote against you who desperately need health care, they are and will and have voted for a framework of a budget that would basically annihilate Medicaid in your state. Let me give you a secret. I don't know if you know this, but over 341,000 residents in Nebraska are on Medicaid. That represents $3.7 billion of revenue, of money, of spending that goes to the state of Nebraska for health care. And this is not just health care, just ad nauseum. This is health care that goes to take care of patients and then also goes to fund hospitals in a rural state, hospitals that are desperately needed. Now, this is the kicker. Of that $3 billion or so that goes into the state, the federal government picks up 69%. In essence, only 30% of that money you have to contribute. But the problem is, since you're going bankrupt and all, you're not going to be able to contribute that. You have come into the zone of FAFO. Unfortunately, that map, this map, is going to be your...
What happens when royalty meets reality? Today we are going to Nebraska, where some of the most loyal supporters of Mr. Donald Trump are now speaking out. Not because they switched the sides, but because their life are getting harder. Ask me why. Rising prices, struggling farmers, small business under pressure. And now the question many ask is it the what voted for? This is what we voted for? Guys, this is Ricastek. Let's break it down.
So Nebraska voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. They didn't vote for him once. They voted for him time and time and time again. They felt that they were making a wise decision, but it turns out that this was probably the worst decision they could have ever made. The nuts and bolts, the core of their economy, the agriculture industry, is absolutely being annihilated as a result of their vote.
Right now, Nebraska has all sorts of challenges are cropping up for Nebraska farmers. The Nebraska Farmers Union says producers are facing the toughest time in decades.
Their costs are rising, but commodity prices are falling, meaning they can't really turn a profit, and that's hurting the rest of the state's economy. Channel 8's Jake Holman joins us live after talking with a local farmer. Jake, what'd you find out?
Yeah, Rod, Sophia, the GDP numbers for the first quarter of 2025, which is another tool, a measurement to estimate the size of the economy. It does not paint a pretty picture for the state of Nebraska here, and in large part because of the largest industry, which is agriculture. Now, tonight we hear how one farmer is coping with these challenges.
With the interest rates where they are right now, it's putting everybody into a bind.
Bill Landon is one of the many farmers in Nebraska who's in a tight spot financially. According to a report from the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, Nebraska's gross domestic product fell more than 6% in the first quarter, tied with Iowa for the largest decrease in the nation. And it's because of losses in agriculture.
Now, you remember Don Bacon, the Republican from Nebraska? He's even saying the quiet part aloud. Nebraska's in trouble, and it owes a lot to the tariff policy and all the bullshit that Donald Trump has enacted on that state. So, Don, my man, don't be surprised when everyone told you, just like your MAGA cohorts in your state, everyone told you that this was going to be the case, but yet you failed to listen. My mother would always say, and I think she was a genius, she would always say, if you lie down with dogs, you will get fleas. Well, in Nebraska, you laid down with Donald Trump. You laid down with Donald Trump, knowing what his policies were, knowing his Project 2025 tendencies, and you now have fleas. In reality, this is not about red or blue. This is about business, the business of politics. And I believe that there is a nefarious plan to take family farms, and I'm talking about family farms, and it is based on causing them to go bankrupt, coming in with the hedge funds, and buying at a fire sale price. So Nebraska, you got exactly what you voted for.
It's Joe from Georgia. So we're getting ready for the first domino to fall, and we know what happens after the first one falls. Well, the state of Nebraska, the governor, Jim Pillen, has asked the federal government for help because they're not going to be able to pay their bills this year. And here's the problem in Nebraska. They had over a $2 billion contract with the Chinese government to export soybeans to China. Well, out of that $2 billion, they've canceled all the contracts. So out of that $2 billion, $350 million was state revenue taxes. They're not getting any of that. And the governor also goes on to say that because the migrant farmers weren't able to work in Nebraska this summer, that those people didn't pay their taxes either. And the farmers who already have crops in the ground, folks, they've already spent their money. They're going to need help too because they're not getting any money from the contracts anymore. So Nebraska is the first state. And when you look at the Midwest, you're probably looking at Kansas, you're looking at Iowa, South Dakota, all of those places that are large exporters of grains to China and depend on migrant farm labor. They're not going to be able to pay their bills either. So here's the first one to fall. But of course, as we do know, a certain person in a certain house in Washington, D.C. at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, they know all about bankruptcy. I'm sure they'll be able to help.
In Nebraska, Trump has a strong support, especially in the rural community, among farmers, small business owners. But now, some voters say the economy pressure is real. Groceries are more expensive. Fuel prices are affecting transportation. Trade policies have impacted farmers. Small businesses are struggling with costs. And here it is the complicated part. Ask me which one. Many of these voters still support Trump. They still believe in his leadership, but They are frustrated with what they are experiencing economically. For some, it is not about changing parties, it is about asking hard questions. Can strong policies, royalty surviving living costs, can campaign promises survive economic pressure? And maybe the biggest question is, when the reality hits your wallet, doesn't care about the slogans, what you told people in campaign. But the real question is, when this problem will be solved so people can have a normal price on the market. We still have another clips. Let's watch them. I come back with a comment.
Of course, for farmers, because this is all laid out in Project 2025. So in Project 2025, the plan is to roll back all of the protections that farmers currently have access to. Basically, there's different programs. There's crop insurance. There's these commodities programs. And most of these are either subsidized or paid for by the government. So farmers, if a small farm gets hit with, a weather disaster or something else happens where they can't profit off their crop like they usually do, they're backed up. They're safe. They can, float for another year because of these programs. They want to get rid of these programs. They want to take the burden of these programs off the government and put it back onto the farmers, meaning these small farms get hit with one disaster and they're fucked. They're done. Guess who won't be done, though, if they get hit with one disaster? Giant mega corporations, these huge corporate farms that have all the capital they need to float if they get hit with a disaster. They're not going to go under. What they're going to do is buy up all these little farms and consolidate them into these giant mega farms. That's what the plan is. And I know it's easy to be like, oh, fuck these farmers. They voted for this. This is what they get. But this isn't good for any of us if this happens. I know like the FAFO is delightful, but it isn't good for any of us. And it's scary. Like, these are the people that feed us, that provide our food, and we need them. And it's horrifying to see what they're...
Big news coming out of Nebraska. Tyson Food is shutting down its beef plant in Lexington. That's about 3,200 jobs in a town of just 11,500 people. Yeah. So that's nearly 1 in 3 residents that work there. Now why? Because America cattle supply has dropped to the lowest level in 75 years. The company says that it's consolidating operations, moving production elsewhere, and even cutting shifts at its Texas plant. Another 1,700 workers will be affected. Now remember, this isn't about one factory. It's about the future of rural America. Lexington economy, ranchers, truckers, and small businesses are all bracing for the fallout. Now tell me, what do you think? Corporate survival move or a devastating blow to working families? Now keep in mind, Lexington, Nebraska voted for Trump 72%. And this is what they get.
Not the Nebraska farmers going bankrupt by voting for Donald Trump. Like, I don't give a shit. You guys voted for it. Fucking take the consequences. Fuck you guys.
Nebraska going into bankruptcy because of self-inflicted damage. They were team firing over here, saying, you know what, everybody pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Our ideology is nobody should get anything that they don't deserve. Now they want a bailout. They're asking for socialism. Socialism bad until I need socialism. Get the fuck out of here.
This story is not about Nebraska. It is about what's happened when politics promise you something and what you expect to get your everyday life. It is about voters trying to balance royalty with life experience. And in 2026, this conversation may be shaped more than just one state. They may be shaped the direction of the entire country. But This is not just about my take, it is about what people think about what's going on in the United States. Guys, tell us what you think. Drop your thought in the comments. If you want a real conversation without the noise, make sure you subscribe to Lika's Take. See you in the next one. I love you guys.